What up, people, and welcome back to my closet. I'm Bridger Frederick, and I am going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to keep doing the intro, so that's not different. I am a T10 paraplegic in a wheelchair permanently from a car accident, and I believe wholeheartedly that I can walk, run, bike, swim, everything I used to do, snowboard, hunt, everything I used to do, most importantly in the future, play with my children. I believe that I can get all that back 100%. I really do believe it. I actually know it, like, in some weird way, like deep down in my heart and my soul. I just know it. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but if you have a spinal cord injury or know someone, I hope that you get to know it too someday. And this is going to be a little different because I'm just going to tell a story, and I'm not going to like go into any like philosophies or tricks or like mind hacks or whatever the stuff that I love to focus on my day-to-day life. This is just a story, and I'll let you discern whatever you want from it. And I would love your feedback. I would love to know if a similar thing happened to any of you, and if it was as profound as it was for me, if it was as scary, if it could have changed the whole course of, whatever your spinal cord injury, brain injury, not injured, your life in general. Like, just hear me out here. It's going to be pretty interesting, I think. So it starts in a small town down in southern Colorado, and I was at the time buying cattle down there. So it is November. It's pretty cold, and I was at a cattle auction. I think I went to one in Syracuse, Kansas the day before, and then came back to this small little town, La Junta, Colorado. I was there all day for like 12 hours, bidding on cattle, buying cattle, watching cattle sell mostly. And then I loaded a few trucks up, semi-trucks, and was going to watch the sale all day the next day, and then load the cows up and get out of there. So this is it's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life, and I still don't fully understand it. I have my thoughts about it, and you'll see how it ties in to the motor vehicle accident I was in really strangely, like in a weird way. So I was in this little hotel room, and this hotel was like a little motel, really, and it was right in the middle of a big stockyard. Like, there was just fenced in cattle all around, and it was like it's a sales yard. So all these cows are hungry, thirsty. They're all just there in transit. Most of them don't have food for the night, or they have very little food, or they're just getting on a truck and going to the next place. They're in transit, but they're confused, they're unhappy, so they're making lots and lots of noise. And I can't hear them inside the hotel room, or I don't notice them or anything, but I'm just sitting there having a normal night, hanging out and getting ready for bed around 7 p.m. or so. And then I've only told this to some of like my closest friends. I don't even know who I've told this to, but it's like just a few of my closest friends. And I don't know why, because it's so interesting, and I would love other people's opinion on it. And like I said, if something similar has happened to other people, but I'm sitting there, and like all of a sudden I just, like, my heart starts pounding so hard. I mean, harder than it's ever pounded working out. Then it's like I'm talking like literally on my Apple Watch, like 190, 195, 205 beats per minute, sitting on the end of my bed. Like, pretty sure I was like laying like with my dirty boots off the end of the bed, just kind of resting and stretching my back out a little bit. And all of a sudden, like, I sat like bolt upright, my heart just going faster and faster. And I just had this like tidal wave. I mean, absolute, like, exactly what you would imagine someone says, like, when their eyes flash, or when their life flashes before their eyes as they're dying. Like, it was that intense. I saw everything so clearly. It was like the most intense experience I could ever imagine. Like, completely unprovoked. Like I was having a normal day, not thinking about anything in particular or special. And like I cascaded into the most intense panic attack I've ever had. I saw everything so clearly. I knew that I had kind of dropped the ball and had fumbled like with my direction in life and what I really wanted to do. I had spent years previous to this, on like basically a 4 year soul searching journey that took me to like 15 different countries, thousands of miles walked, hitchhiked, biked, like, and so much time spent in deep contemplation, thousands and thousands of pages of journal written. Like I had gotten pretty clear on what I wanted, where I was going in life, how I was going to get there. I had known it all, and I moved back to America, and somehow in the course of a couple years and so many life influences happening, I totally had lost sight of not the end goal, but the journey there, the importance of the journey there. That's the thing I really lost sight of, is that the journey used to mean everything to me, and I never gave a crap where I was going. Like that was the most beautiful thing about me as a person. It was my biggest superpower, is that I was 100% disassociated with the journey as a destination, or sorry, the destination as the pinnacle of the process. It was always the journey to get there. I wanted to be as hard and as fun and exciting as possible. And so I lost sight of that. I had completely just myopically pictured what I wanted in the future, and I was just grinding towards it, like just suffering and grinding and working, and I thought that was how it was done. And I just saw clear as day in that hotel room under great distress. I mean, I'm freaking out at this point. I'm serious. Like it lasted for like at least an hour, where I was like, or at least 45 minutes to an hour. At the 45 minute to an hour mark, I was like, I have to, like, I've always relieved like I've never had stress this extreme before, but I've always relieved any stressful situation. I was like, I'll just like go for a run. Like I will either run until I die of cardiac arrest, or I calm my body down. And I went out, and I still in boots, still in jeans, like completely in work clothes. I just started running, and I started jogging through, sprinting through all these stockyards of cattle, and they were like crying out, and just, I was like, why? It was just such a clear picture to me that like I still like really enjoy eating meat, still quite possibly want to have some sort of land related cattle operation, but it was so clear to me that industrial cattle market was not where I was meant to be. I was meant to be on a massive ranch doing grass-fed cattle, nose to tail. Like that's just, if I was ever going to do something like that, that was where my destiny was. And I wasn't even sure in that moment that that's where I was ever going to go. I was lost. I was freaking out. Like when I say I've never been so scared in my life, that remains true. It's since then, I don't think I've ever been so like, and I've been very uncomfortable then and very scared, but not in like such a physiological way. Like I've been really in tune and aware of my own mortality, and scared for the future, and worried about not succeeding, and about what people thought of me, and all sorts of stuff like that. But I've not physiologically had such an immense amount of adrenaline and fear in my body ever for any reason at all. Like it was nuts. And so I ran for probably like 4 or 5 miles, like ran as hard as I could in a big loop around this town of La Junta, California. And I got back to the place, and I was just, obviously my heart rate had not slowed down. It was literally at like a sustained 200 beats per minute. And I just knew exactly what I had to do. I knew I'd been disrespecting my body. I had been disrespecting my own personal values, the values that I grew up with and that I hold near and dear to my heart. I had been disrespecting my time, my everything that I held most dear, my principles and my values were being violated by me. And I knew, true as anything I'd ever known in my life, exactly what I needed to do. And it was like a wildly cathartic experience. And I ended up, going back and finally falling asleep in like this like floating haze of just like finally like having my heart rate. As soon as my heart rate started to slow down, I just went unconscious basically. And I woke up the next day, bought cattle all day, hauled the cattle back, and like I think I even told I think my friend that I was doing this operation with was down in Texas at the time. But I know I told my girlfriend about it and like was totally excited and like I don't want to drink or eat unhealthy, or like it was just whole like I'm gonna revolutionize my life and do all this stuff. And I just ended up ignoring it for about 24 hours. I got in a mood, had like a load of this like, so here's what happened. So woke up, goal is to like go on a hike and go have this amazing nice day over in Fort Collins, Colorado with my girlfriend. And but first I had to go load a truck full of cattle. And I just got really angry, furious at the people doing it, just reverted straight back to the way I'd been treating people before. And the experience just reassured me, like, no, I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in this to buy a massive piece of property and be able to pay property taxes on it using cattle money. And like I had this long-term goal of I wanting this piece of property and being able to protect it, this big wilderness area, which is still my goal, just a different path. And I just reverted back to exactly what I was before, dismissed that completely, all of that happening completely, and was like, screw that. Like, I've been turned off the path too many times. I'm committed to this path. Like, I'm charging, like, this is what I'm doing. And I just put my middle fingers up basically and was like, nope. And this was all like just subconsciously inside my head, but it was real and it was happening. And that is why when about 10 hours later at 6 o'clock that evening, when I was driving down the highway at like 80 miles per hour and some guy was coming this way and he turned in front of me, I hit the front of his car and flipped, and my truck went through a telephone pole with my back to the ceiling and instantly obliterated me, paralyzed me, like 20 breaks in my spine, ripped all these ribs and crushed all these ribs on this side. Like, I immediately was sitting there in the car and I was like stretched out. My whole body was stretched out and up like onto the dash. So I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, and like my legs were up on over my steering wheel, and I was slumped down in my seat with the crushed ceiling in front of me. And I knew immediately that I was like paralyzed and very maybe going to die. Not sure, but I was super conscious. Like, no, didn't even bump my head. Remember every single moment of the flip like it was slow motion. Was super confused by the telephone pole because I was expecting to roll through the field and was like just bracing like for a pretty gnarly accident, but was totally taken aback. Like, I was sitting there like, what just happened? Like, what was that impact? Like, and sitting there just like owned. I could hear Kelsey beside me gurgling and choking and unconscious, and was trying to speak to her and see if she was okay. And in that instant right there, I knew beyond a shadow of doubt, it was so clear. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that, like it was, and I didn't like connect the dots later or anything. I mean, in that moment, right as the most like close I've ever been to death, I just realized like that was the moment. Like, it was like someone was slapping me in the face in the car, and I was wide awake. Like, I wasn't angry. I was not sad for myself at all. I was terrified that Kelsey was going to die, or was dying, or was literally about to be dead next to me. It was completely dark. I couldn't see her. The roof was smashed in between us. I couldn't even see over to her. And she was making terrible sounds. And she eventually started moaning and like kind of trying to say something, but couldn't say anything. I just held her hand. And her brother was on the phone with us on speakerphone. The phone's, I've lost it. It's down at her feet, basically on speaker. And I'm talking to him. And there's power lines all over the car, and people are coming up and like saying like, we want to help you, but we can't. There's power lines all over the car. We gotta wait for the fire department. And I say that's fine, and they are relaying, like, they're asking me how I am, and they're relaying all the information to the fire department, which luckily there's a massive fire department. Like, we're out in kind of the middle of nowhere in Colorado, just outside of Greeley, and just happened to have crashed on a road like 2 miles away from a giant rural fire department, like massive fire department. So fire department's there in like less than 10 minutes for sure. Like, it wasn't long at all. And they get Kelsey out first because I know that I'm not going to die like right now. And so they get Kelsey out and they're getting me out, and I'm completely calm. I am like, I wouldn't have been. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, I would not have been completely calm if, like, the irony of it wasn't so obvious to where I was like, I mean, this is, like, in some weird way, like, this is something special happened. I just felt very in touch with the fact that my choices had brought me to this moment, and that I had an alternative, that it was in my power. And I didn't trust your gut, your heart, and your brain interface with something else in this world. And whatever you want to call that is fine. It doesn't matter. I have no idea. I'm not even going to begin to pretend that I know what that intelligent feeling is. We call it God. That's what religion is all about. And like, I wear this because it was a gift from my grandmother to my father, and I adore Christianity. I love everything I know about the Bible, but what I know about the Bible is very little. I was so just didn't give a crap about that kind of stuff. I just know the passive osmosis stuff that I learned, sporadically attending church and going to church camp, and from religious people who I've had conversations with, and my grandma's, but I don't really prescribe to any one thing. If I prescribe to anything, it would definitely be tending towards Christianity, but I literally don't even know enough about it to say that I'm that. And so far, everything I've learned about Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Judaism, I've loved equally and have cherished all of the knowledge that I've got. So I have no idea where I stand on that. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about that. But what I do know is that something very palpable and very real guided me with that moment. And it was just so obvious to me when it occurred. And obviously it's impossible to really relay or express that feeling of sureness, but it was a very strong feeling of love. And it was almost as though a parent begrudgingly punishing you so you could be better later. And I felt it right away. And I guess I just wanted to do exactly that. I wanted to share that story, share if anyone else had a similar experience. I want to put it out there for people who do not have a spinal cord injury or any traumatic, horrible thing happen to them, or haven't lost any loved ones, or anything bad, really, really life-changing, life-altering, life-shattering bad has happened to, which is few of us, but we've all had some pretty traumatic stuff happen to us. But I'm just saying, really pay attention to what's happening in life. I have found that without fail, if I just combine my gut, my heart, my brain, and my ability or willingness to imagine that I can connect to something else in any way, shape, or form, capacity, whatever that belief is for you, I don't think that it's as important that you define exactly what that thing is or what that belief is, as just that you have some sort of belief that you're not alone. I think that's like the most important part about it, and that you're open to the information. Because if you say there's nothing else out there and it's not impossible, then the information can't come in. It doesn't work. Like, that's the crazy part, is that it makes itself really obvious and really apparent that it's happening as soon as you do, in fact, 100% tend towards the, the magical side of things, the fact that there's more to the world than what we just see. As soon as you do that and you allow that imagination, that belief to kind of happen, then it becomes very obvious, because the information's so readily available when your gut, your heart, and your brain are all synchronized and feeling good. One of the three is sending off alarm bells, then something's wrong. Like either you're going to have anxiety and fear and not like it intellectually, logically, or like in your heart, you're going to feel like it's wrong, like you're doing something against it, like against your values, against your principle. Like there's going to be something in your chest, in your heart, that's like telling you like this isn't in line with what we do. Whatever you do, whatever, like, that's on an individual basis, and very individualized to, your environment and how you're raised. I'm not trying to do a lesson in right and wrong here. I'm just saying your heart knows what your definition of right and wrong is. And I think most of our definitions are pretty in parallel, no matter where we come from. Like at least what we know to be, maybe not what we say to be right and wrong, but what we believe and know to be right and wrong. I think we're pretty in line with that. And then the gut is probably the most critical, because it's the most overlooked. Like, it's pretty easy to logically be like, I don't like that, I don't agree with it, that scares me. It's pretty easy to be like, my heart knows that doesn't align with our values. But the gut thing is something differently entirely. It's almost a different, like, part of you thinking than like thinking for you. It's the last line of defense. When your brain is like, no, that logically, that could make sense. And your heart's like, yeah, that doesn't in principle necessarily go against our values, or it's perfectly in line with our values. Let's just use a different example. Like, logically, that makes sense. It's in line with our values. Gut says no, for no reason. Like, it doesn't, heart, brain say yes, but your gut's just like, you have to, like, it's a tingling, tiny, subconscious, deep down sensation in your actual gut, in your, like, somewhere below your heart, that just says yes or no. It just says yes, no, you trust it. More than anything else, it is the last line of defense. It always filters in this direction. Like, it comes, there's information out in the world or being presented to you. It goes into the brain. Your brain filters it, processes it. It goes down through the body. The heart makes a very critical decision, and you decide whether or not it is a yes or a no from a values standpoint, and then it's passed on down to your gut, and the gut makes a decision without the heart or brain interfering whatsoever, and you just trust it no matter what. Your gut knows. It won't mislead you unless you're misleading it, and it's unhealthy and unhappy and hurting, and it's saying, I'm in anxiety and fear and terribleness all the time already. If that's where it's at, then obviously that's the signal it's going to send for everything, and I can attest to that. Having gut problems was the most depressing, confusing time of my whole life, because I had lost my most faithful deciding factor in life, whatever, I don't know what you call it. But I don't know, I just wanted to share that story. And then, I obviously did include my own little 2 cents on things, except for the part that I want you to think about most, and that's like, what does that actually mean? Like, what do you believe me? Like, do you think I actually, or do you think that's just like some sort of coping mechanism I had instantaneously right when I crashed, that I was just able to remain completely relatively happy. I was like, I did think, you know, I can't believe this is happening right now. I can't believe this is happening. But as far as like my own mortality, my own not walking forever, whatever that was, like I never, that like it never even was like at the forefront or a thing. It was just clear as anything in my life has ever been. I've never been so sure of anything than in that moment that that was what needed to happen for me to go. I didn't know, I wasn't, so at that point, I wasn't sure that it's what I needed, or that it was gonna, like, I didn't know what it was gonna lead to. I should not overstate my sense of confidence there, but I knew that that had to happen. I knew it had to happen. I didn't know why yet. I didn't understand the full picture. That came from hindsight and lots of contemplation and confusion and suffering. But at the time, I've never been so sure that that was supposed to happen and it had to happen. That's why I never ask anyone who was with me for those weeks after I was injured. I was never once for 1 millisecond mad at that driver. And I never would have been. That's never something I would have been mad at anyone ever, unless I said that before, but I said, Kelsey ended up having a pretty serious brain injury, but not anything that was like trajectory of life completely, it was not that bad, all things considered. And if she had been killed, then, I don't know if I would have not had anger towards him. But from my perspective, I never had anger from what he did to me. He made a mistake, a split-second decision, changed my life forever. And he is probably going to be responsible for, he already is responsible for the most happy moments I've ever had in a condensed, like the amount, if happiness could be measured in pounds, the amount of happiness I've experienced by volume and weight in just the last few months would far outweigh all of the happiness, joy, and bliss and confidence that I had for the rest of my life combined. And that is not an overstatement at all. Like, it's such a level of, like, you can transcend into this place of contentedness that just isn't possible if you're fearful, anxious, worried about the future. Like, and that all got erased by just pure, like, perseverance through this gnarliness of having a spinal cord injury, having all the other injuries associated with it, getting a massive infection in it, and all the trials and tribulations, and just the mental crushingness of antibiotics ruining my body and ruining my gut, and like just losing all motivation, and like it literally sucked the soul out of me. The antibiotics and the opiates combined, like, just killed my gut completely. And it, like, that's a very critical part of your soul, apparently. But I don't know. Anyways, it was just something I want to share because I thought it was interesting. I hope that you found it at least entertaining and enjoyable, and that you appreciate and are glad that you spent the last 28 minutes with me, because I appreciate it so much, enjoy it so much. I don't know if you hear that, but I could feel it. It was thunder. There's a crazy storm outside, apparently. And again, thank you so much. Please, I would love it if you leave comments down below and told me what your experiences were, or if anything like that happened to you, or if you believe me or don't believe me. Would love your feedback. Anything positive, negative, whatever you've got, throw it down below. I would love to see it, and I would super appreciate it. So have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day, night, evening. Make it count. Time is precious. You don't have as much of it as you would like. There's never going to be enough. So enjoy it, please.